Welcome to Leadership Unlearned and Reframed. It's Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we on this program are inviting you to suspend all that you believe and know about leadership. When I speak about leadership, I'm not only speaking about it in a workplace or corporate environment, I am asking you to take up your leadership mantle wherever you are. It could be in your family system, it's very much needed in our communities, and it could be even on your local netball or football team. Wherever you are, you can be a leader. And so, because we're taking that away from you in terms of the old constructs that you may have been very comfortable with in leadership, because we're removing that, we do not want to leave you unattended. And that is why we're offering you a reframe. So, this is our podcast. We give and we take leadership unlearned and reframed. As in every podcast session, I always have a guest with me, and today's guest is Peter Seah. So, Peter, welcome to our podcast.
Good morning, Maxine. Thank you.
Good morning. And if for those who are wondering, why did Peter say good morning? Because Peter is calling in from Singapore and it is morning there.
All
So,
right. Yeah.
great.
It's almost exactly 12 hour ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, Peter, tell us a little bit about yourself and what do you do?
Yeah. Uh, uh, Before we start, thank you for this invitation. We very honored to have a conversation. Um, I call myself a system thinking facilitator,
Mhm.
a system thinking OD practitioner. So the work that I do is I help leaders and teams to explore, not just looking at things that are happening, but go deeper, examine possibly patterns that can happen, and more important, relate to how they think individually and how the group think. And this is one of the very difficult work uh, because including myself, including many of us, right? It's not easy to put the mirror back to ourselves. Yeah. But I hope that through all the work and having walking them side by side, uh, going through the journey, that I could make an impact to these leaders. And I believe that, it has a multiplication effect. We could influence one person, that leaders could bring in another 10, right? The other 10 could then influence another 10. Yeah, that's what I hope to do, and that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And such a simple statement you made, and there's so much that you put on the table. So, this idea of holding up a mirror for leaders to see themselves, this idea of the ripple effect that our leadership can have, and I guess that's why you work with leaders because there's a multiplier effect. And the other thing that you spoke about is in terms of sort of like going below the surface to see what happens there. So which one of those you want to pull apart, pull a longer thread out for us on?
Yeah. I would think, especially in the recent few years after COVID, I do notice that many leaders are searching deeper answer
Mm,
to many of their questions. For some extent, to some extent, leaders are actually asking, why did things happen this way, and how the COVID, the withdrawal, in a sense of global withdrawal, we can't keep silence, give them some space to reconsider uh, how things rolled out for themselves when they strategize certain direction, when they thought of something. Yeah, so this is an area that I find a bit fascinating. I use the word a bit because there's still so much work to be done, including my own understanding, working. Yeah. But I'm fascinated by the fact that there are more and more leaders. And with my other colleagues, I also gather from them that in a space of conversation, in a space or even one-to-one or team conversation, there are more willingness to explore the area, and there are more willingness to kind of say, well, maybe it start with me.
mm,
And that is something that I could share more. I could
yes.
do more. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mm.
what I'm hearing is that there's a greater sense of leadership accountability and really identifying that, hey, whatever the problem is, I may have been part of it.
Exactly. And I like the word you use, accountability. Yeah. While we always say that, sometimes most leaders focus on only of more left brain work, and especially in the age of AI, we just pound on it one more time with answer from AI. But I do see leaders who really spend time thinking about, wow, why am I doing this?
Mm.
What triggers me to work on it, right?
Yeah.
And this is really, I will consider one of those important leverage point that Meadows mentioned in one of her child leverage points, which is really understanding your own paradigm. Yeah, when you're very clear on your own paradigm, you know what to do. And there is an area I always try to work on, especially in my facilitation work, uh, to kind of trigger the conversation. Right? Where do I start from, and why do I want to move on to the direction? Yeah. There's always a structure dynamics, when things happen. But then where is this source of the dynamics coming from, right? Yeah. And it's so difficult because we look at things so differently and we bring different context to the issue. Whether you're a leader of various level, be it the first time leader, level, senior level, we have different contexts, our own context, ourself, the way I understand people, the interrelationship, and so on. And all these are mashed up together. And sometimes we have forgotten, right? Because we just purely look at the process and say, "Hey, that is your role. You better do it." But there's so many perspectives to that, right? Yeah. I was also thrilled by an occasion when I met a leader in one of the East Asia country, and she told me, right, you know, I can do all this by myself. In fact, I'm the one who created the recipe and formula. They are in the F&B business. But to move on, I really need to bring all my teams together. And first of all, they need to understand why this recipe was created. What is it intended for? So the recipe is not about putting in all the ingredients and I cook something out for you, right? It comes with a passion. It comes to why I created this particular dish, for example. Yeah. So I find that conversation very fascinating, and it does motivate me to want to do more with leaders like them. Yeah.
Yeah. I think what you said is fascinating. That entire bit, starting with, during the pandemic and after the pandemic, a sort of creation of a space for reflection and increased self-awareness for leaders. Definitely, you could see that permeating through the workplace where leaders are very aware of themselves, their responsibility, and of course, by extension, other people in the system. One thing
Yes.
that struck me is that idea of multiple realities, that there is a growing awareness that if I feel this way, other people may or may not feel this way. What I am seeing is not what other people are seeing. So a willingness to embrace that there's more than one way to do this or more than one perspective in this situation. And that last piece about that leader who's saying, I need to share my why. And people need to understand the why. It goes right back to all of the things that we learned in some ways, and in some ways, things have gotten lost. So I love the sense of
Exactly.
the self-awareness for the leader. Go ahead, Peter.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And it's not easy. Maxine, I believe you have experienced it yourself. Yeah, you're author of two books. And in a way, you have cases mentioned there. And one of the things um, we're looking at is also the psychological safety of our own self, not just the team, right? Although in a larger aspect, when we're talking about psychological safety is with the team, but it's an interrelationship. And one of the interrelationship is with yourself.
Yes.
I notice that leaders who are willing to ask that question and then next invest in pulling themselves back a little bit
Hmm.
and then look at the space and see what is going on in the space. And words like called feel, if we borrow a word from Dr. Otto Sharman, is the feel, looking at the feel.
Hmm.
And that will makes a lot different. And when we can all see the feel together, it
Hmm.
makes a lot different. But that requires discipline. Um, and for that matter, I was just thinking, and that's why Peter Senge wrote the books of five discipline. It is a discipline.
It
Right?
is.
The ability to lead, the ability to see things in a larger systemic picture is a discipline. Yeah. And I notice in my work, leaders who are willing to pull back usually will gain a lot more because we're often very used to pushing, the profit driven mentality, the need to achieve, right? And even in schools, it's sometimes all about grades.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, whereas we are trying to promote learning, but I think in many aspects, many of our education institutions are just about educating, but not learning. And learning is one of the very fundamental nature, right? Nature in out there, they learn.
Hmm.
Somehow we forget to learn. We
Hmm.
just want to achieve. Yeah.
Yeah.
And coming back again, leaders who are able to pull back will see that perspective.
Yeah.
Allow me to share one more story. So
Sure.
there's one more work I did with a very young entrepreneur um, in the mid-30s. We were doing a sessions with him and his team. We were calling to help him to kind of help the team to reframe before they look at strategies. And after one day of a morning and MBTI, and then later afternoon, we talk about what matters in the vision statement, right? And suddenly he kind of stopped and say, you know what? I realized, right, throughout this conversation, the problem is me. I was a bit shocked because at that time, it was just after COVID, and I couldn't get a visa to go into the country because suddenly they actually stopped the visa,
Mhm.
and actually Singapore and that country has actually what you call bilateral no visa entry, right? So I got
Wow.
stuck and I have to stay in a hotel and on a online doing the conversation. So I was shocked on the screen, and he kind of turned to the camera and tell us, I noticed that throughout the morning, how two of you, there were two of us, facilitated a conversation and made me realize what actually I didn't ask good questions. I was
Mhm.
just pushing myself through my question. Wow, that was fascinating. The ability to pull back, right? And he's a mid-30, energetic, full of ideas, and he's a creator. To be able to pull that back was very fascinating. So I asked him, what makes you realize that? He said that somehow the sincerity and openness of the team
Mhm.
got him to think, wow, I never hear that sort of statement. I never feel that sort of emotion coming out from the sessions. And the magic caused me to kind of think back, yeah. And ever since then, the work that we do together, he was able to ask very fascinating questions that involves the team, that kind of brings out his thoughts, his fear, his concern. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
In that story, I got a sense that he was able to connect with his heart. That,
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And there was something that you said as well in terms of, so a few bits back about, our education system, us not learning like deeply. Because again, most times it's about this, right? It's about making sure we are perfectly speaking heads, but not really connecting to our hearts either, or to our souls, or to our other value systems. It's just really about being able to regurgitate, being able to calculate, being able to do these things. And so that brings me right back to where you were talking about seeing the field and the leader's ability to hold back so that they can see the field. And that requires, just as you said, discipline and patience. Because, when we're rushing to finish the deadline, when we're rushing to see about profits, we really are not going to see what will emerge. And so that sense of being, and that's what I heard about your story with your entrepreneur, because he was able to watch what was happening in the field, see what emerged, and he sort of took a risk and opened his heart a little bit, and it changed everything. That's a beautiful story, Peter.
Yes, thank you. And while you're mentioning and I'm thinking about it, I still feel that thrill because we didn't really say, let's come into the room and let's see whether we can change your mental model. It wasn't like that. It
Yeah.
just it just evolved, and that's give me the sort of conviction and practice. Sometimes, when we structure a learning and say, let's do it, the moment we say do it, for many people, it triggers certain fear, and some of them it could be ego. I refuse to be judged, and therefore I don't share, right? But when you put it out in a form of learning, And somehow the learning evolved to the interaction, right? It creates that sort of psychological safety because we are not afraid to say something because I will not be blamed. I will not be laughed at. So
Hmm.
imagine a CEO coming in and say, "Oh, it's my fault. He's the number one man, right?" And
Yeah,
indeed, the other leaders, they are also young leaders. The director was pretty shocked. And that evening, we have a dinner. They were all amazed. What happened? And someone come and ask me, do you put some medicine in my boss drink? I said, no, we didn't. I say we
yeah,
were equally surprised. Yeah, we were
yeah,
equally surprised. Yeah,
yeah. And I think when leaders show that amount of humility, it really becomes a turning point for the team.
yeah, yeah. And of course, while we celebrate success, there are also occasions where people refuse to change,
Of
right?
course.
I use the word refuse in the sense that they outwardly, say, no, I think that's not the way I'm going. That gets me to think too. I think a lot of time it's about decision too, right? We make a decision where we choose a choice, right? We also want to respect that choice. So it's important that the team move together, right? They move together. And that reminds me of another story. I mean, a case where I work with 12 leaders. They are an international organization in a country in somewhere East Asia also. Um, Three were local leaders. The rest are all international leaders. So there was some tension. There
Mm,
was some perspective of how, based on country origin, based on where they're coming. Um, and some of them just kind of make a decision. No, I don't think they are suitable for me to work. And there was some sort of war put up. And you can see from the story they tell that it actually filters down to the next level of leaders who take the alignment and direction from the leader. Since my boss is not talking to one another, I better don't do that, in case I get a backlash. And it
yes.
has an effect, yeah.
Yeah.
Fortunately, through a couple of coaching conversation from a team level, it opens up and they all decided that, yeah, the initial decision I make, I think actually backfire. Let's do something, right?
Mhm.
And the leader of this senior team decided, why don't we do this? Let's share power, and instead of me always leading the meeting, why don't we rotate?
Mm,
And when you rotate, all right, other than certain boundaries, especially financial boundary, as I understand you're an accountant, there's a hierarchy of it. I think most of the time, if you make that decision in a meeting, let's go by it. Wow, when
right.
when we listen to it, I say, my goodness, that is powerful. Sharing
Hmm.
power, right? And
Yeah.
over a period of time, it's not immediate. Like all things, it happen over a period of time. The team get tighter in their articulation of what they do not like and what they liked, and how they see certain decisions are made. And it has again filtered down. By the time we finish one first part of the work is almost a year, they told us, wow, the impact has converted into revenue
Hmm.
or minimizing certain losses in some areas. And hands on, they also decided that the same type of work should also be shared with the next level of leaders. Right?
Oh,
So that's a
nice. Yeah.
manifestation. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I'm trying to point out is that it's not every time very sweet, very easy. Yeah. But what I think I learned for myself is to have patience and also not judgment. Often we have a certain idea, we also think that that's the best idea too, right? I think we let things run, let it manifest, and let it fester out the good points. Yeah.
Yeah. And so and I guess that's the beauty of what you're saying and sharing about, this ripple effect. Recognizing that, it cannot just stop at the top. It has to be throughout the organization. So that's one thing that I took away. The other thing that I was clear about is that you said it took a year. And I think a lot of times people expect that we have a team retreat and we said what would happen. and it will change. It doesn't change because
It
change
doesn't
is,
change.
yeah,
Correct.
change is difficult, right? And people need to be supported through change. So I've worked with some teams and then they always say, oh, we don't want to do the rest of the work or we don't have the budget. And I'm saying,
Yeah.
dude, you know what? In 6 months' time, whatever fuzzy effects you feel, it's not gonna be there. So said, so
No.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. The other way around, people were trying to make sure in the 2 days it happened. So we all contribute, but deep down, there's still certain structure.
Yes,
It could be a personal structure, the ability to accept, or it could be an organization structure, and that next takes time to change, right?
it
Yeah,
does.
yeah. It takes
But
time to
first,
adjust.
yeah. And even before the adjustment or the change, it takes time to accept that this is what it is. Because usually in that retreat, things have surfaced, maybe about you, maybe about your leadership, that you still need to kind of walk away and say, make that sense of it before you can even move to change. And so I think that's what a lot of people miss. So I love the fact that this really impactful change that happened in your organization with your client, it took a year for it to happen. And I think I want to
Yeah.
underline that, because it doesn't happen overnight. It cannot happen
Yeah.
overnight. So thanks for saying
And
that. So,
And that also takes, I must say, the bravery of the leader to be able to, although we stand side by side, although it's coaching, but sometimes it can appear to be nagging a little bit, Maxine, have you taken some action? Yes, have you tried that? There must be willingness for the interaction. So I do treasure the very fact that in a systemic field, it is important that the relational connection, the interactions is an important part of how things move. It's always about parts interacting. It's not about the parts.
yes.
The more it means that interaction, things won't happen. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because there's always an interplay between the what and the how. So a
Right.
lot of times, people communicate well, so the how is done well. It's the what they're communicating that is not done well, which
I
creates
love
the
that.
tensions, which creates the
Yeah.
problems. And we focus
Right.
a lot on how, so
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah. I love what you say. Yeah. And that's why in my work of facilitating a conversation, I also try to avoid usually jumping into the why and the how. We get
Yes.
into the action. But what really do we want, right? What does it mean to you? For that matter, when this happens, what are the things you see that you might not have seen it right now?
Yeah.
Let's run through it, right? So in a way, some basic work of scenario thinking and planning is very important so that we can see different facets, different contexts, and then ask ourselves, wow, did I not see last time? What triggers that, right? And when you put the different contexts together, there's always a central piece that kind of evolve and that triggers and link all the pieces together. And that
Yeah.
is really one of the underlying uh, important things to look at, right? Especially for us as well as in a group level of thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. I am so excited for this conversation, Peter, because like you're speaking my language, you're speaking about the things that I don't really talk
Oh,
about. This
I'm
this
glad that.
idea of this work, I'm just really appreciating
Yeah.
what you've dealt with, your experiences, the client work that you've done. I'm really holding on to it. I'm in heaven right now.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited too. Yeah, we share quite a lot of similarity for that matter.
We do,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
do, we do. And so how did you get, I guess, yes, let me ask the question. How did you get your clients to shift, or did your clients shift?
I couldn't put a figure, a formula, or a situation to that. I say it's a mixture of both. There were
Mm,
time as in my role as a facilitator, in my role as to some extent a change catalyst, although I try not to see myself that level, but more of the person who is willing to give the system a little poke
yes.
to the questions. Um, because I also remember that I always remind myself while I'm in the system, I'm part of the system, right? My presence and my perspective can influence the system. it could be a negative influence, it can be a positive influence, right? Yeah. So I would try always to get the client to see themselves, right? And my role mainly in describing what I see. Yeah. And I think both of you are we are a member of the International Association of Facilitators, IF. That reminds me of one of core competency, especially in competency C and D. We talk about the ability of the facilitator, whatever that word of facilitator means in a larger aspect. Our job is really seeing a system and describing the system to our client, to our leaders, right? The choice is always theirs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in answering your question, I would say I tend to do more of getting the leaders to work out themselves. Yeah. But honestly, sometimes it tests my it tests my patience, it tests my ability to pull back, all right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
requires some inner work for myself too, yeah,
Yeah.
at times. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess align with that. I think when I just started out facilitation, I used to be and coaching, I used to be very frustrated for or on behalf of clients because you're seeing it, you're seeing what could happen, and then there's the resistance, there's the hesitance. And I've learned to actually let it go, right? So it's because it's not about me. I'm a facilitator. I am just, the evocative or provocative tool. I'm not the owner
Yeah.
of this process. And it's a big lesson and it is a big shift.
Yes, yes. Um, so while we are in this conversation talking about leaders, I do believe like you and me, you probably agree too. We are leaders by whatever measure and definition we talk about too, right?
Yeah.
So it has to start with ourselves, yeah. So I'm also very conscious of that, yeah. Um, and one of the things, I'm coming back to the question you asked me, right? Earlier on, do I get the leaders to shift themselves or do I do something? I think our present, our practice matters a lot. Yeah. And it's not easy. It's not easy. Sometimes I do find myself accountable and say, oh, I'm not doing enough. But again, not doing enough may not be right, right? Actually, you have done enough. You just have to let the client manifest. Yeah. But I do hold dearly and I do encourage uh, my learners, my client, to kind of do their own practices. If I may, I would just want to show you one of the things that I ideally try to practice as often as I could, right? And this is one of the journal that I have, right? I don't know
Okay.
whether it's seen. Yeah, I
Yes,
do
I'm
my
seeing.
own. Yes, I do my own loops and I draw it out to see the pictures. So this is using causal loop diagram, looking at a bit of the iceberg, for example, right?
Right.
This is drawing from the practice of Dr. Derek and Laura, practice on DSRP, looking at the
Mhm.
system from the concept of the simple rules of DSRP and so on. I draw it out. And I try to also do it either before and after my workshop so that I can sense, I can feel, and I can actually reflect on the
Mhm.
system that I see. And that includes me in the system.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna take that away from you. I'm gonna take that as a practice myself because when
Yes.
I finish a workshop, I usually stay in the reflection. Very much first with me, right? What did I do? What should I have done differently? What am I doing tomorrow? How am I gonna advance the conversation? Looking at the team and saying, what's missing? What is it that I'm sensing around this team? Because a lot of times when I do team retreats, people are lying, right? I mean, I can't say it any other way. Sometimes they're just not saying the truth, especially on the first day. And so I spent a lot of time crafting it and I never mapped it out like that. So I love the idea of the loops, checking that out. So definitely going to be able to map that. So thank you for that gift. I'm going to take that and I'm going to
Yeah.
touch base with you after so I know that I could have a little bit
Yes, let
more
me know how I could,
methodology.
yeah, help. Yeah.
Thank you
I'm
so
I'm
much.
I'm
I'm definitely
fascinated.
going to do that.
Yes. I'm fascinated by that too. And let me see what I could uh offer some ideas and also learn from you. I know that you're a lady of many talents. Yeah. It's always again, right? The emphasis on interaction as we
Yes.
interact. things will emerge. All right.
Yes.
It will
Yeah.
surface into a something that we'll be surprised that we have never thought of, that
Yeah.
kind of give us a different perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that idea because I've seen it in my career journey. As you know, I was an accountant for many years. I am still an accountant. That never goes. And so when I started my coaching and facilitation journey, I was more or less in accountant mode, still lone wolf, still doing it on my own. And I've
Mm,
found really, I'm seeing more and more where I want to collaborate with people. And that's been an interesting shift for me. Maybe
wow.
becoming more self-aware, because
Wonderful.
I'm thinking of it in terms of what you shared earlier about your clients, right? That self-awareness, that recognition of the levels of systems, the recognition of what the system needs versus what I need. So I'm thinking from what you're saying, I think I have personally experienced that in terms of shifting from lone wolf to collaborator.
Yes. You have kind of also inspired me with another thought. Um, I would call a lot of my work is really deep down in the trenches.
Mhm.
Yeah. At times also I or in a higher level space, mesmerizing at the sky, looking at how things shake. But really the real work is in the trenches, grinding, piece by piece, work by work. Uh, and that gets me to recall another situation where the work spanned over 3 years, where I have
Wow.
to work with many, many teams in the same organization. And is that one conversation at a time, is that one perspective at a time that stack it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm very glad that this organization, when we first started, we are all trying to make things work. And the organization had grown to a space where they are so comfortable. And the real testimony for me will be, once the work is done, when I'm not around, when I no longer have to persuade them to an extent, nag them initially, and they can do their work, and that's the testimony. And I just
Yeah.
spoke to the CEO last year and asked him how things are going. So he told me, "Wow, well, we're not using extensively the software, but the practice we are still doing. The level of conversation, the way we see things systemically is still going on, and that's why they are who they are right now, a
Yeah.
very stable, strong organization. Yeah.
Yeah.
Despite multiple changes, the people are able to come together, right? So that the system will emerge
Yeah.
stronger. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I love that idea again. And I think and I don't know if it's I don't know if it's cultural. I don't know if it's, where people's focus would be. Because this drive that we have for, let's look at the profit, I think people don't understand how much profitability is related to psychological safety, how much is related to people feeling safe and that they could speak up. Everybody wants an engaged employee, and how do you have an engaged employee who doesn't feel safe? And if
Yeah.
we look at everything that's going on in the world today, well, people don't feel safe, so they're not going to be productive. So if you spend the time creating that in the organization, what difference will it make, right? It'll make a huge difference. You want to
Yeah.
go ahead, Peter?
Yeah. I just want to also echo what you're saying, yeah, about psychological safety. Yeah, of course, the technology, the processes are very important. In fact, without all these, sometimes the cutting edge of an organization would not emerge. Sometimes that could be your process that you can actually compete, right? But in order to make this happen, eventually it's still that human factor.
Yeah.
That's why over in Singapore, there's an emphasis of it's not about just learning AI, but is how to be on top of AI and make AI work for you
Yes.
rather than slave to the AI. Yeah. And that takes that deep conversation, that understanding back to seeing you as a person, who you are, and
Yeah.
where our differences. And at the end of the day, there will always be a one set of decision, right? We can't have multiple set of decision. Then how we honored it and the psychological safety will be, yes, let's go with it. and
Yeah.
we are able to willing to take that step and know that yes, it might be wrong, but we take step to change, and eventually all of us are coming together.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a
Yeah.
very important effect. It's something that cannot be taken away from us by any sort of machine learning. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I agree. And this idea of change takes time, and this idea of change being incremental, and that sometimes we take two steps forward and something happens, we take a step backwards, and we're still going towards the same change. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes when something disrupts the change, that people panic and says, this is wrong, it doesn't work. So how
Yeah.
do you deal with that when you're dealing with your 3-year client?
Wow, that's a thought-provoking question.
You're being facilitated, yes.
Yeah. And I still want to go back to it started with me first, Uh, it started with really understanding the client. We
Mhm.
often say that, knowing the client, uh, if I take a role of just purely a consultant and moving, I was just asking question, right? I try to figure out, But on the other hand, actually, what is important is to know the person sitting opposite me. What are
Mhm.
his thoughts? What is he willing to commit? What
Mhm.
will be his role?
Mhm.
Uh, and I think that matters. It's not about me alone. I could have all the knowledge, I could bring in the content, but eventually I'm not the one who doing the work. Yeah. So I would say the first step is really getting that relationship with the client. And one that is established, we will have already built a nuclear system.
Mhm.
Not a nuclear system, but a nuclear system.
Yes, yes, not nuclear, nucleus. Yes, we get
Yes,
it.
yeah, nucleus. Yeah, I just want to make sure that my pronunciation is right there. So
Yeah.
that is the core that will manifest, right?
Mm.
Because the leader is willing to shed some of the old self, not totally, not yet,
Yeah.
but recognizing there's something I need to shade off.
Yeah.
For that matter, maybe not shade off, but how to adjust. Because I am
Mm.
who I am, but I am who I am also in relation to other people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that matters. Just like you and me,
Yeah.
we are having a relationship or conversation, right? And that
Hmm.
matters because that manifests.
Yeah.
And for the matter, I was just having that flash of mind. Maybe I should ask you a question too. Maybe it's my turn to interview you.
Maybe you could. Maybe you could. Maybe
Yeah,
you
yeah.
could. And
All right.
but what you're saying there is so important because I think the point of entry in the system is very important for the facilitator. So,
Exactly.
so it sounds like if you enter through the HR, the human resources, you may not have as much flexibility to hold that system together as if you enter via the CEO.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So that's the answer. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I kind of having that gap feeler here is because of course once we establish where we start, it is also important to bring in the others into the picture.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in I think it probably yourself too, all right? We also need to talk to the other players, the other stakeholders, so
Yeah.
that they have a stake in the decision making,
Yes.
however small, however
Yes.
big, right?
Yeah.
And that again must bring together. And again, that reminds me of a very interesting chairperson. Um, to the HRO, I was asked to do this piece of work and given very limited time to design, right? And I asked the chairperson, will you allow me to have two simple rules? One simple rule is, during a conversation, I need you not to talk first.
Yeah.
And it's all, oh, mine is a big organization, a big chairman. And he say, yes, why not? You're the facilitator. Okay. You do what you need to do. I'll say, okay, thank you very much. I really love it and respect it. Now, the second thing, could I bring everybody into the room first, at least
Mhm.
2 days before? Anyway, I have 3 days only to execute that conversation, a 3 day retreat. Yeah, he said, yeah, why not? So we came to the office and we brought in all the group, different CEOs and all the directors, and I just asked them, what would it what would it like to happen in the next 3 days while we are having good food? What else beyond good food? And the chairman was there, and you get people to talk. And these people are strong leaders, they speak up, right? And with that piece, we went into the retreat, and that was my design. I just used that piece
Nice. Yeah.
as my design. Yeah, there was
Yeah.
no other, and there was no other processes. We got into a circle and we speak.
Yeah. That is, that has been my experience that has really debunked of a lot of what I learned as a facilitator. Because we are taught about activities and having, creating those experiments. And I found more and more that action learning circle where people just sit in a big circle and they just really talk from their heart and their head, maybe with a few prompts. I found that to be the
Right.
most
Wow.
effective thing. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
you know so it's been it's sort of like it ebbs and flows, but it's very interesting when those conversations happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So Maxine, maybe is a time. Is it okay? I may ask you a question.
Of
Now,
course, go
just
right ahead, go right
from your
ahead.
sharing, would you like to share with us? So at that moment when you're doing the circles, what are some of the things that usually flash in your head? It can be a big circle. When I start, would they talk? What sort of questions in your head that you deal with? Yeah.
I do a number of things. So sometimes I create a deck of positive cards. So
Ah,
they're words like optimism, confidentiality, creativity, just lots of words. And I just ask people to blind pick a card. And I ask them to hold their presentations from that perspective.
I see. I see.
So
So
there's
actually, you set the feel. Yeah.
Yes. So I set it in terms of we're gonna have this conversation in a way. So I don't have to say it that we're not gonna have a blaming conversation. We're really gonna speak from our hearts and our experiences. And then I use silence a lot. So I don't
Wonderful.
say who's the start or where's the start. I'll do like a round robin where people will share their word and say, this is how I see the word being applicable. And once everybody has said like a sentence or two, which will take 10 to 15 minutes, then I just keep quiet. And people just build and popcorn and it mushrooms into this huge conversation. Sometimes there are meltdowns because sometimes people get super
Indeed.
emotional about their experience.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and sometimes people begin to move into solution mode. And I don't guide it, they guide it. So it's sort of like we've set the rules of it. And I love that. And because for me, that's when the magic happens. And it
Yes, I can
usually
resonate that.
yeah, and it
Yeah.
usually happens on the second day because the first day
Wow.
usually stirs up a lot of stuff.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah. So, and it's because the first time they're actually dealing with it, they're confronting with it. Most organizations, they like to go for drinks or dinner or something after the first day. No
Right.
problem. I will go with them. I'll make sure I don't have any alcohol because I'm watching I'm still working. I'm still working.
Yeah.
And so in the
Yeah.
morning, I will get up and sort of piece together what happened in the room,
Yeah.
what happened with dinner. And I say, great, I'm just going to leave the conversations to evolve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I actually resonate with that. And thank you for the sharing, for also confirming what I went through too. Yeah, I
Mhm.
like the part where it takes that one day, right? Just for things to
Yeah.
happen. And
Yeah.
sometimes we just need to have that patience.
Yeah.
And that always remind myself, sometimes the work is actually us. We are the one who actually shape or trying to shepherd the conversation, but we end up over shepherding,
Yes.
over
Yes.
influencing,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And that's
yeah.
that's also something I learned as well, that sometimes I could over plan. So what I
Right.
noticed is that I just need one activity that will involve everybody talking about something, and everything that needs to emerge will emerge. Whereas before,
Absolutely.
when I started
Absolutely.
facilitating, I wanted to have a game here and a game here and a game there. And now it's
Yeah.
like one activity on the first day, the conversation around that, and the magic happens the morning of the second day. And the
Mm.
second day, and I've been trying to move people from the 2 day structure to the 3 day structure because the second day is so emotional that it should be a short day.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. And then the
Yeah,
third day, people have time to regroup and really start saying,
exactly.
let's
Yeah.
go forward this way. So, I mean, these are things I think about all the time because, it's like how to be more effective. But clients are thinking about their costs and they're thinking about their time away from the office and they really need it.
Indeed, indeed, yeah. It's bring all the leaders together is not cheap, right?
It's not cheap.
Having tools down and so on. Yeah, and your story triggers me another thought. Many years ago, I was doing a piece of work in Vietnam.
Mhm.
Um, and the leader was one of the Scandinavian countries. He don't speak Vietnamese very much, but he speak. Although the conversation was about let's plan for the next 10 years. But indeed, actually, the stuckness was relating cultural perception, expectation. So it took the whole day to melt the ice. It was very stiff. And I must say, those earlier years, I believe I'm also not so at ease, right? I get worried and say, things are not happening. Yeah. But
Yeah.
then I noticed on the second day, especially after the first day where we have a dinner, wow, at the dinner table, there were more questions than the workshop itself.
Yeah.
Then really think on the second day it happens, and that's it. The
Yeah.
flower blooms, and we did a lot more than the first day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the flower blooms or the volcano erupts, right? So,
yeah, it's just
yeah. Some big shift happens. So Peter, I wanna thank you for being here with me today. I know that this is the start of many conversations that we'll have. They would all be recorded, but I really wanna appreciate the work that you've been doing and what you've shared with us. A lot of it resonated with me. Starting with, after COVID, how retrospective leaders have been, how you've seen that desire to change themselves and have that ripple effect throughout the organization, just as we know what leadership should be doing. We spoke a
Mm,
little bit about having the patience, the leaders having the patience to see what will emerge in the field and knowing that change is not overnight. Sometimes it happens in a year. You spoke about a change, an entire organizational change happening over 3 years. The role of the facilitator while change is happening or while we're working with the client, how it is that we become part of that system to change and influence that system. Also knowing that we have to be patient and a shift in our practice from being tools driven to really being more in awareness and more in tune to the client system. So, Peter, I mean, there are many other things you put on the table that I have not said because it's just been a wonderful conversation, full and rich about your practices, your experiences, your clients. And I really want to thank you for that. And so, Peter, how can anyone who's watching this, how can they reach out to you? What's the best way to contact you?
you can reach out to me in LinkedIn. Just
Mhm.
type in the word Peter Seah, Seah, right? And
Yeah.
I think my LinkedIn picture, it looks almost like what you're seeing now.
Yes, it looks
Drop me a
exactly like
note,
that.
yeah, and that will be a good way. Or they can reach out to you. I can actually pass on
Yeah.
my what you call the email address and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I will definitely do that. And I know we have a guest with us today, and I just want to open the room. Vindra, welcome. If there's anything you want to share with us before we leave or any questions you want to ask, feel free to come on and ask them. Okay. So we want to thank again, Peter. I want to thank you for showing up. And I know I feel like it's the beginning of a longer
Indeed,
conversation
indeed.
that we
Yeah.
will definitely be having offline. So thanks a
Yes.
lot. And of course, to our listeners out there, we are here every Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern, where we always have a leader or someone who's adjacent to a leader speaking about leadership. And so Vindra is sending a note saying, no questions at this time. Very insightful. Thank you. Looking forward to more. So Vindra, we will not be here next week, Tuesday, but we'll be back in May and running right through May with our guests. We have some beautiful guests lined up. Okay, Peter and Vindra, thanks a lot. Take care of
Yeah.
yourselves.
Thank you, Maxine, for wonderful hosting me
Yes.
and the conversation. I learned from the way we have communicated and shared too. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.